Hello, everyone. This is Celebrating Cinema, a podcast for the love of cinema. I'm your host, Elliot Bloom, and as always, if you love what we do here, you can show your support by leaving us a review on whichever platform you listen to us. It really does help other fellow cinema lovers find us. Now, in today's episode, we're thrilled to explore the world of Mati Diop, a filmmaker whose work transcends borders, blending the personal and the political with a distinctive voice that is all her own. Diop, a French-Senegalese director, has captivated audiences with her unique approach to storytelling, one that weaves together fiction and reality in search of deeper truths. After a series of remarkable short films, she made her feature debut with Atlantiques, this genre-bending romantic drama set in Dakar, Senegal, and has now released Dahomey, a bold exploration of history, memory, and the complexities of identity. Dahomey is a dramatized account of 26 royal treasures from the Kingdom of Dahomey, now known today as the Republic of Benin, which were held in a museum in France. The film follows the literal journey of the artefacts returned home from France to Benin. We even hear the imagined voices of these artifacts and the reactions of the Beninese people. Though Diop is a part of cinema royalty, being the niece of the legendary Djibril Diop Mambete, director of the groundbreaking Tuki Buki, she has carved out her own path, one that embraces both the personal and the collective. Return and restitution are at the heart of Mati's work, and it's something we will discuss. In this episode, we also discuss her journey, the making of Dahomey, and the themes that permeate her films. Hi, Mati.
Hello.
Welcome to Celebrating Cinema. This is a podcast for the love of film, and usually we always start our podcast by asking our guests their first memory of film, which I'm very excited to ask you because your uncle Djibril Diop Mambete, Tuki Buki, is one of my favorite films of all time, so I can imagine growing up with him, you probably have quite some memories of cinema.
Yes, but I actually I can't remember exactly the first time I saw the film. I think it was for sure on the TV of my parents' apartment in Paris. It was for sure on a VHS on the TV, and I obviously remember being very marked, very, very marked by the images. But strangely, I don't remember it like the first image of cinema. That I think, and also there is Tuki Buki, which is the film of my uncle, so I think it was felt in a different way than a film from a stranger filmmaker.
Yeah, sure.
And I think the first shocks, I think there's a specific shot in A Woman Under the Influence by Cassavetes that made me think, wow, this is how you can look at someone.
Yeah.
This is how a woman can be portrayed. And it was not so much about the performance of Gina Roland, but more about the way she was being looked at. Yeah, I think Cassavetes was definitely a big influence and kind of really like put cinema passion in my veins directly. Because at that time I felt very, very, very close to the place the film were coming from, and which felt like a place of love, a place of restituting reality in a way that felt real, I guess. And just made me think, okay, this is what cinema can do. Through cinema, I might be able to invent, to restitute a reality which is in align with how I experience it, and not how so many institutions are trying to give me a version of that I found very disconnected from my sensibility. So cinema felt like a place where I could be myself, where I could have control the narrative and propose a vision of reality that is aligned on my own experience.
I've heard you speak before of how becoming a filmmaker was also a process of liberation for you.
Yeah, of emancipation. Yeah. As a woman, as a non-white woman, as an artist. Yeah.
And already you're talking about restitution in a different sense, which clearly relates to your films in and of itself, of these themes of return and restitution.
Yeah.
And it's nice to hear how you talk about it, because I was already thinking that return and restitution is as much a story of your films as it is for yourself.
Exactly. I'm very glad if you were able to sense it and to feel it before I even myself articulated. But yes, indeed, I the first time I heard the word restitution in 2017, which is a word that was very absent of the debate in France since like forever. It really first connected me with the core of my work, especially the films I shot in Dakar, where since 2008 I decided to engage my cinema indeed in a very clear restitution gesture. And by this I mean to create spaces where the protagonists I chose to film have the possibility to become the subjects of their own story and to depict their reality with their own words, which is to me major to resist against the colonial gaze that is still so persistent through the Western medias. It was already the case 15 years ago. And you can imagine, I think about how migrants are I was going to say portrayed, but it's not portrayed. How migrants are represented in the media is something that at some point I could not stand and accept anymore. And it felt, because of the incredible legacy of my uncle's films, amongst other things, I knew how cinema was such a powerful tool to reinvent image and narrative of ourselves radically. And I think that's what made me able to gain a lot of time, is because I've been confronted to very radical films of my uncle and Tukibuki, whether he's my uncle or not.
Yeah, they're influential.
Because it's such a radical gesture. And through this film, it's such a lesson on how, as long as the African continent is concerned, how cinema has the high potential of cinema to be a political tool. And when I say political tool, it shouldn't be heard as something austere. It's also the possibility to talk about the most complex and difficult situation with humor too. And to be able to mix humor and social political satire, or to play with all the genres, and to just be completely free to reinvent your own language.
You speak of the influence of your uncle. I think Atlantiques, to me, felt like a continuation of his legacy. And Tukibuki, I say that seriously, because again, it's a couple set in Dakar, Senegal, who are sort of, they feel a sense of entrapment of their living situation, similar to what you see in Tukibuki, one trying to escape. And
true. I made a film called 1,000 Suns. It's pretty much a conversation with Tukibuki. It's not a homage, because I don't think that's really necessary. No, it's really a conversation with this film. It's with I found the actors of Tukibuki 40 years later and have them act in my film again. But it's more a reflection on how, on the topic of emigration through different eras, the era of my uncle and today. And so, in Atlantiques, I don't really, I didn't think it as a continuity of Tukibuki. I think it's more that it's in the same city. It's in and the problematics are very similar. It's just the what has changed, the eras, but the questions of staying or living is not only a conversation with Tukibuki, but it's also the nature of a social and political context. Knowing that in Tukibuki the question was already: should we leave? Should we stay? Is living is a betrayal? Is staying is which is questions that in my short film Atlantiques, 3 young friends are wandering about around the fire camp. One wants to leave right now with the boat he sees in front of him. He wants to cross and go back to Europe, while his friends are telling him, "You're crazy. If you do this, you're gonna die. And why don't you stay in the country to build the future of this country? Forget about Europe. Forget about, stop being blind about Europe like an El Dorado." So I think that these questions of living or staying have just really been an obsession, and the continual existential crisis for a certain Senegalese youth. So I think it has more to do with that same subject being over and over reinterpreting by different generation than an obsession of Tukibuki. And I think that I want also to make clear that even though there is a strong legacy, it was also even more important for me to completely emancipate myself from that that influence, because.
And I don't think you have a same style. You're very
no.
It's very, your style is very much your own, but it's just more I can see how one leads to the other.
No, completely. And I had to have even more my own style, because
100%.
Because of the risk of imitating.
But also his films can't be imitated.
Thank you. I was gonna say exactly the same thing. He's not imitable anyway.
No. But I do want to ask you about the relationship between Atlantique and Dahomey, because I think there is one in the sense that you play between fiction and reality. And when I say that, in Atlantique, the opening sequence strikes me almost as a documentary. And although it merges into something or transverses between other genres, it still feels very real at the heart. And with Dahomey, it's very much a documentary, but you lean on fictional elements to bring it to life or to give character to the statues that we see. And I want to know what you think about this relationship between how they're married together in a way.
So true. Well, in Atlantiques, it was the social rooting was an ethic question. Like, what I mean by this is that as far as the fantasy dimension goes, I really needed to make sure that it's taking place. We're talking about a whole generation that's lost their life while attempting to emigrate in Europe, and it was very important for me to, in one sequence, to give a sense of the very factual reasons why they would, which is working on a work construction site under the influence of Dubai scale of work constructions, where a lot of people are working in terrible conditions, very close to slavery, and not even being paid for some, which is really something that was happening more and more in Senegal. Society being more and more liberal and capitalist and sick, and definitely exploiting its youth and being precisely responsible of the departures and of the death, which is pretty much dystopic and tragic. So I wanted this to be clear, so I could, because the situation was rooted enough in reality, to take even more freedom, to take it to a not a sci-fi, but fantasy dimension, where the idea was mostly about how these boys who disappeared in the sea are starting to hunt the girls who stayed behind, and how the film becomes mostly a meditation of being haunted by their disappearation, and how their absence and disappearation become also the starting points of emancipation for Ada, and how the lost lives are intertwined with the living.
And how does that then relate to Dahomey?
And then in Dahomey, it's when I thought for the first time of dedicating a film to the subject of restitution, I was still writing Atlantiques, and I was already very interested by the parallel between the return of the spirits of the boys in Atlantiques and the idea of the artifact returning to their homeland. I felt that to dedicate a second feature to the journey of return of this artifact could be a very interesting continuity. And with this being said, it's also always the question of my own return also to my African self, to engaging over, I mean, again and again, my cinema in Senegal, in Africa, as an act of decenter.
Decentering yourself.
Decentering myself from Europe.
Yeah, which are the words of Ousmane Sembene, another Senegalese filmmaker.
Yeah, true, very true. And in Dahomey, I dealt with a real topic happening in real life, this repatriation, who happened in November 2021, 21st. But before I jumped in that film, Dahomey, I had this feature film in my head, which was the story of an African mask, telling his own journey with his own with their own words, from the day of their capture till the day of their return, which was supposed to be set in the future. So for me, the topic of restitution has had everything to do with future, because first of all, because I never thought that I would attend, that I would be the witness of a restitution, unless be a very old lady. And so this film I had in mind was pretty much futuristic. And so when a real restitution was announced in the press, it felt to me like future became present, like that. And so when I began to shoot Dahomey, even though there was within the process a documentary aspect in the making, I was still really dealing with very fictional elements in my head. And I really want to make sure that even though the film would document and archive a real moment, that it would also be a very subjective piece of cinema that would include a fictional dimension too, by having the artifacts say their own story of return, by having them, by imagining what would be the relationship with the returning in their homeland. And the idea was to kind of go beyond the idea of the artifacts returning, but to evoke a much larger community of people, both ancestors, but also diaspora. I think that in the voices of the artifacts, there is as much space for ancestor, for the past, and for the new voices, which is the diaspora we form. And so within the voice, there is already past, present, and future. And then the voice itself, which is composed by 3 different temporality, is in conversation with this youth that in Benin, these students.
I'm glad you mentioned the diaspora element there, because there's a particular line that sticks to me when you hear one of the statues speaking. They say, I'm torn between fear of not recognizing anything and them not recognizing myself, which I think is something people from the diaspora can relate to, in the sense of returning and not feeling recognized or welcomed. Even. But what was also interesting to me is you've spoken before about removing or taking the conversation away from academia and politics and centering it with the people affected by colonialization and how that plays out. The student discussion is brilliant. I think it'd be nice to hear you talk a bit about that. But I think something that was almost more powerful was you captured these really intimate moments of children looking at these statues. And there's something just that words cannot put to, that you see the effect of them being able to see something for themselves. And could you perhaps relate that to how it helps them to learn to desire themselves again, or something you spoke about before?
I really think your comments on the film are very, very beautiful and well sensed, and so it's hard for me to add, any explanation, because it's exactly through the moments, the portraits of kids discovering for the first time the artifacts was exactly. I mean, I knew while shooting it with Joséphine, the Rouen Violard, the DP, that it was really building desire for ourselves again. And that's what was so beautiful in these moments, is that was the power of cinema. Like, it was both capturing in direct a kid connecting with the first time with an artifact, but I knew the effect it was going to produce on me, on us.
You don't know.
So which is always something that I keep feeling amazed as a filmmaker, to continuously be amazed by the power, but by all cinema can create and provoke.
I wanted you to speak about the student discussion that you had. That sequence, or that discussion, is very musical. It felt very much like an orchestra, these clashes or these ideas colliding between each other, and I think that's really shown in how you edit it.
I kind of apprehended the debate as a musical piece. So yes. Well, I feel that also because my father is a musician, and that I might have, in my very early age, been surrounded by, music being made, or I don't know. You never exactly know how, the influence really happened, but music is the first medium I actually chose. When I was a teenager, I was very much into bass, very much into sampling, and also singing in my room. Music is really, really my first language. And as a filmmaker, I always feel that it comes first. Music comes first. So I have a very, very musical relationship to all I do. So, and it's also how I composed the debate. Like, it took me a month to meet a lot of different students from various disciplines. And I gathered 10 people with very different point of views, very different sensibilities, shared questions to them through Gildas Adonou, who is a young director, who both helped me to cast them, but who also chose to be the moderator. So I shared to him a list of questions, and voila, and then I staged it in this very beautiful amphitheatre.
Yeah, which is also another musical aspect of it, almost.
Yeah, true, exactly. And then the way we worked on the editing was also very, very much based on ideas, but there was such a rhythm to it. And so at the end, I had the feeling that I kind of apprehend each participant as different notes, very notes that would together build a harmony based on strong contrasts, you know? And so it's still based on very rational and precise questions. It's really a debate of ideas, but it's orchestrated in a very musical way. The debate itself, but also the way the debates and the chorus of their artifacts are being put together. I almost worked it as an opera, you know, like two chorus turning around each other, and we never really know if they are going to be able to really like meet because of this void that had separated them from each other. But I think that the edit was very much approached like very musically.
I would love to talk more with you, but I could talk about your films all
likewise.
day.
Yeah, it was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
If you want to stay connected with us at Celebrating Cinema and Lab, follow us at Lab111 on Instagram and Letterboxd. Check out our latest episode on the films of German director Wim Wenders, or listen back to another interview with director Rich Pepiat on his brilliant film Kneecap. If you love what we do, support us by leaving a review on your podcast platform. It really does help. This was the Lab 111 production, edited and produced by myself, Elliot Bloom, music from Hugo Amazal, and artwork from Studio FFF.